Hey everybody, it is Trags, Mike Petralia back with the latest episode of the Jungle Roar podcast powered by CLNS Media and of course our friends at Prize Picks and the Game Time app. My pleasure to welcome back Jay Morrison of the Pro Football Network covering the NFL and all things Cincinnati Bengals. How you doing, Jay?
Doing great, Trags. Thanks for having me on.
You enjoy OTAs and off-season practice and the whole rigmarole of getting the team ready in the middle of spring for the upcoming season?
I would say it's weather dependent. I enjoyed yesterday very much. When the previous week when it was baking hot, not so much. I was a little worried about being out there for an hour and a half yesterday, but it was really nice. And if we could have weather like that, then yeah, I'm all for it. You don't glean a whole lot from it, but
No.
it's at least the first one is interesting just to kind of see where some guys are slotting in and who's there and who's not. And we'll see, what it looks like, what the mini camp looks like. And it's the same way with training camp, really, where there's that initial, I don't know, adrenaline or excitement, and then it turns into monotony. But yeah, it's something to write about. It's a good chance to kind of catch up with guys. You're not doing X and O type of football interviews in the locker room.
Sure.
You just kind of get to know them as people. And so I would say I enjoy it.
I'd say that right there, Jay, you just touched on it, is my favorite part of OTAs.
Yeah.
Getting to know a lot of the new faces, getting to know some of the veterans who've been around in a more relaxed setting. Now, the setting this offseason, just a little inside football talk here, the Bengals are having their locker room completely renovated. So they have been moved to an auxiliary locker room inside Paycor Stadium, actually right down the hallway, literally. Space is a little more cramped. So they're actually having to, get used to different surroundings, just like we are, which is kind of fun to see. But getting to know these guys in an informal setting really helps us do our job, I think.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, I went up. I rarely in the regular season talk to Joe Bocci, but I went up and talked to him yesterday. He's the defending Logan Wilson charity softball champ,
Yes,
Run Derby
it's coming
champion.
up this Saturday. Yep.
And I was talking to him about that, and he's got a 3-week-old baby. He's got a wedding coming up. There's stuff I wasn't aware of. DJ Turner, yeah, we talked football, but then when that was over, I asked him how come he doesn't go by Juan Drago. That's such a badass name. That would be a great name. And he said everybody calls him Drago, but he just, on the official roster, it's DJ. But he said the players, the coaches call him Drago. If you listen, you'll hear that. So I'll keep my ears out for that. But yeah, it's fun just to talk to these guys as men, as just people that you're interested in and get to know them a little bit. And the X's and O's are secondary this time of year.
All right, let's refresh some of our fans. We have very loyal fans. You have very loyal fans. You and Paul Dehner on the Growler, the new podcast that, of course, Paul Dehner is doing. You do your podcast on the Pro Football Network. We have a lot of loyal football fans, but even some of those loyal football fans don't understand the machinations, the logistics of this offseason period in the NFL. There are 3 phases, correct, Jay?
Yes.
There's phase 1 that we just completed. Phase 2, OTAs began on Tuesday, the Tuesday after Memorial Day, where the teams, where the players can get into helmets for the first time, and then that advances into phase 3. That's mini camp and whatnot. But if you could, for a lot of fans who don't know, what kind of delineate and explain what those 3 phases mean, why they're so significant, I guess.
Well, actually, I guess I need a tutorial too. I thought phase 1 was when they just do the conditioning and that's it, and then phase 2 is what they just came out of, where they can do position drills and practices on the field, and then phase 3 is OTAs, where they can do. You can go against 7-on-7, 1-on-1s even. You can have direct competition. The Bengals treat it differently than any other team. Some teams really dive in and go heavy on 11-on-11 stuff and 7-on-7. And yeah, there's no hitting and any of that, but it's offense against defense. It's actual competition. And a lot of guys talked about that yesterday, how exciting it was. They're like, I haven't covered anybody for real since the last game of last season. And DJ Turner was talking about that, and Trent Irwin was talking about how fun that contested catch he had against Mike Hilton, because the competitive juices start going. He said it's running routes on air is boring. It brings back the joy of ball, is what he said, because you're actually going against guys one-on-one. So this is the next step up. I think minicamp, the only difference between where we're at now in minicamp is it's mandatory, and right now it's voluntary. But it's an easing in. It's going to be interesting to see, because now the NFLPA is lobbying to get rid of this whole part of the season, of the offseason, and instead start training camp a little earlier and start a ramp-up period a little earlier, or maybe it starts mid-June and then goes into the training camp at the end of July. And so this whole April-May thing will be gone. I don't know if the NFL will go for that. The coaches really don't have a vote. I'm sure the coaches would be against it, but it's all the phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, that all confuses me. I'm glad I don't have to write the practice script, because I would be totally confused what you can do that day, what you can't. But this is what they are doing on the field right now is the end of it. It's the same thing we're going to see in training camp. It's just, or in mini camp. It's just that mini camp will be mandatory, and the guys can be fined if they're not here.
Mike Petraglia, Trags here, host of the Code Reds and Jungle Roar podcast on CLNS. I want to take a moment now to tell you about Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 5 million members. It's the most fun and exciting way to get in on all the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. How does it work? Well, just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. The finals mean more on Prize Picks, and so do the star players. You get boosted payouts on select basketball stars you won't find anywhere else. And when the finals are over, the hoops action doesn't stop on Prize Picks. Women's basketball is just getting started. With young stars like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese looking to make names for themselves, along greats like Breanna Stewart and Asia Wilson, you could win up to 100 times your cash watching them ball out. How do you get involved? Well, just download the app today and use that code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the app today and use the code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
You mentioned the Trent Irwin catch against was Mike Hilton, correct?
Yes.
On Tuesday. DJ Turner, I noticed, had a very nice pass breakup in zone coverage. Asked him about it after practice on Tuesday, and he said, "Yeah, just trying to get my hands on the ball." And it was, and I told him, the ball was headed for Trent Irwin, is headed right for his hands, and popped it up in the air. And he said he didn't even know who was behind him, because obviously he was in zone coverage. Yeah. But like you said, Jay, it's really interesting. I think it's fun to talk about and write about when you see these guys in competition, even if it's, a month and a half out from training camp.
Yeah. And it's, good to see that Joe Burrow is human. I mean, he's every pass he threw, that was the last of his, I believe he threw 11 passes in 7-on-7. That was the last one. And every other one was right on the numbers. I mean, Yoshivas had a drop. He had one other incompletion. I can't remember what it was, but he really was throwing the ball well. And, it's fun to watch this. DJ was talking about how, it was a good play to pass it, to break it up, but he's a little mad that he didn't pick it off, because he tipped the ball, kind of fell near him. He could have picked it off. But all that, you don't try to read too much into the performances, because it is what it is. They have helmets on. Yeah, they have helmets on, but it's short. It's jerseys and T-shirts, no pads, anything like that. But it is just good to see the juices kind of get flowing again. And these guys are competitive by nature, and that competition comes out. I was talking to Mike Hilton and Trent Irwin about that. They went to the ground on that play, and that coaches hate seeing that this time of year. And neither one of them had a problem with it. It was just a fact they both kind of went up for the ball. It's hard to keep your feet when you came down, and there was no ill feelings there. And it's good to see something close to real football at this time of year.
Well, let's get to number 9. After practice yesterday on Tuesday, Zach Taylor said that he likes where Joe Burrow is at. You mentioned the fact, and I've noticed this as well, Joe Burrow appears to be throwing the ball well, but that's from our untrained eye, our layperson eye, if you will. We're lay people watching the game of football. From Zach, I asked Zach Taylor, from your trained eye, how does he look? And he said he looks exactly like we want him to look at this point. We're happy with all the progress he's been able to make. To me, the fact that Burrow has been able to be out at practice 1 week, come back and follow it up, and then follow it up on Tuesday with another practice where he's throwing the ball with authority, throwing it strong and on time. That's probably what Zach Taylor is looking for more than anything else, right?
Yeah, and we kind of saw it last week with the throwing across his body, throwing deep, and really kind of snapping off those throws. So it starts with the mechanics, and then they've seen the mechanics for a couple weeks, and I thought yesterday was a big step. I hate to keep going back to that play, but the Trent Irwin, Mike Hilton play, if that's a route on air, Trent Irwin catches it right in the numbers. If Joe Burrow throws the ball there with Mike Hilton in coverage, he breaks it up. He put it up in a way where only Trenton Irwin could get the ball. So those are the kind of things you love to see. That's where, if his wrist is say 90% instead of 100, then maybe it's hard to have the velocity and the accuracy all right where it needs to be. Joe is so accurate. It's one of his hallmarks. And now when you've got defenders running around out there too, you have to be even more accurate with the passes. And I think that was one of the things that Zach was talking about too, is, you look for little things like that. And it's still a long way to go. So if he wasn't where he is right now, I don't think there would be any reason for panic. But conversely, the fact that he is where he is, I think is a really, really encouraging sign coming off of that surgery.
Is there any more urgency to Joe Burrow this offseason, given that he's dealt with so much and he wants to finally put any questions about being injury prone or, what happened to him at the beginning of last season behind him?
I don't know. I don't know if there's another level of urgency in Joe Burrow. I mean, that guy is so dialed in all the time. And maybe dialing it back a tad is the way to go. He probably pushed it too much last year. That led to the calf injury.
Let me just jump in there. The irony of that is maybe he is trying to get ready by dialing it back. You would think there's more urgency on behalf of Joe Burrow to show everybody he's fully ready to go. But by doing the opposite of what you would expect, or what human nature would indicate, maybe he figured out, and he told us this a couple of weeks ago, that is what he has come to realize.
Yeah, you can't go full bore all the time. You have to. I mean, there's a calendar. There's a process, a ramping up period, and you have to respect that. It's like a rehab. You want to be back on the field. You want to be 100%, but you can. He's been through these things before. He's been through the ACL. He's been through the wrist surgery. You have to respect the process. Yep. And I do think he is learning that, where, you want to go as hard as you can and you want to push the envelope a little bit, but you have to understand that you can do more harm than good by going too hard. And we don't see him when he's working out and doing the private stuff, but I think he has that I would assume that is something he has learned in his time in the league, is that you do have to kind of follow a timetable, follow a calendar, and we'll see. He really worked hard on he couldn't throw. He worked hard on his body. He looks physically bigger and stronger. Maybe he takes more time off during this break after mini camp and coming back for training camp. But it's something that is, until he has another fully healthy season, it's always going to be in the back of everybody's mind is, can he do it? Is he going to be one of those guys that's just constantly always dealing with stuff?
Yeah. And again, by our untrained eyes, well, maybe trained eyes, but untrained is not the right word. By our observing eyes, not being in football, so to speak, he looks really good. I mean, he looks strong, and I think it's going to be important to see how the coaching staff and how Zach in particular really views his offseason progress. Right now, it would seem to me that Zach looks at him like he is right on schedule and progressing just the way he should. I want to move on now, Jay, to talk about those players. We have about, let's say, 85, north of 80 players at OTAs getting ready for next week's or mini camp in a couple of weeks. I want to talk about the guys not here and why I think this is one of the more overblown stories of any training camp or any off-season program. These are voluntary. And Zach Taylor made the point, stressed the point on Tuesday that I believe the quote was, please, let's remember these are voluntary. And he even went as far as to say that he's told the players how much he appreciates these guys showing up for voluntary practices and giving it their all. But there's no Jamar Chase. Obviously, there's no T. Higgins because he hasn't even signed his franchise tag, and that means he can't be there if he wanted to be. And then there's Sheldon, Rankins, and right tackle Trent Brown. Those are the four players who really haven't been there throughout the offseason. I guess my question for you, Jay Morrison of the Pro Football Network, is it that big a deal?
No, I don't think it is at all, and especially with Jamar and T. I mean, T has 4 years on task with Joe Burrow. Jamar has 3 with the Bengals, but 2 more at LSU. Like, they know this offense. Yes, there's wrinkles. There's Dan Pitcher's new as the offensive coordinator, but that position and those guys, I feel like they could show up on Wednesday of Patriots week in week 1 and step in and be fine. A little more concern, I guess, with Sheldon Rankins and Trent Brown because they're new here. But again, they have 17 combined NFL seasons under their belt. They know how to get ready. And Zach did kind of, I don't want to say talk out of both sides of his mouth. He did contradict himself, let's say it that way, because he talked about the importance of OTAs because you can do so much classroom work and you feel like you've got it down, but then you get out on the field and it's coming at you faster. And
he did say that.
That's where, the learning really takes place. And many said with Rankins and with Trent Brown, he's not worried because they have the playbook. They're able to study that stuff. But when they're not here, it's basically classroom at home. They're not getting the time on task on the field. But I still, if you want to wonder how big it is that these guys are missing, I'll throw out 2 names, Jesse Bates and Jonah Williams. Jonah Williams skipped all the voluntary stuff last year, had a fantastic year, got paid big time. Jesse Bates 2 years ago skipped all the voluntary stuff, didn't report to camp until after preseason game 2, had a great year, got paid big time, and then had another great year, was an all-pro. Mm-hmm. It's important in the team aspect to have everybody together and kind of learn and put this stuff together, but to have an individual here or there sitting out, not that big a deal, especially when you know their character. Like those guys, when they come back, they're going to be all in. And T's not happy about his contract situation, but he's not going to come in and ruffle feathers, and he's going to follow the path of Jesse and Jonah. When it's time to be here, he's going to be here, and he's going to be all in. I don't think anybody should sweat those guys not being here right now.
I agree. And I think, a guy like T. Higgins knows he has a chance to win with Joe Burrow, win this year and win a Super Bowl ring. And T. Higgins has always struck me as someone who understands the difference between being game ready and not putting his personal desires and his personal gain above that of the team. I think T. Higgins, to me, is one of the more genuinely dedicated players to the Bengals when he's in the building. I think he's all in.
He tried to put himself back in that Kansas City game when he was hurt, and they didn't want him to. He just ran out on the field. I mean,
yep.
He's a guy that, and the guy. It doesn't. I don't know if it makes that. He's not going to hurt his earning power by not having a good year this year, but he can really boost it by having a great year. And so the money's always in the back of these guys' heads. And I think, like I said, he is going to be all in. He's going to do everything it takes. And I think it's in his character. And even if it wasn't, I think there's enough leaders, there's enough of a culture established in this place that guys are going to feel out of place and not get turned on, but it's going to be uncomfortable if they come in and let that contract stuff carry over and they're a little
Right.
sour and they're not doing everything they're supposed to be. It's just that's what Zach Taylor talked about when he got here, building a culture. And that's one of the ways that culture manifests itself is they all play for each other as much as themselves. And so whenever he shows up, I expect him to be all in.
What do you think of the rookie class so far? Obviously, they're in shorts and t-shirts and whatnot, and we haven't seen any contact, obviously. But
Yeah.
from what I've seen of Amarius Mims working with Frank Pollock and what I've seen of Chris Jenkins is probably the one rookie who stood out to me more than any other. And I'll throw Jermaine Burton in there as well. I think Burton and Chris Jenkins are the two guys who athletically have a chance to bring a dynamic to the Bengals that they didn't have last year. Bring it really right out of the chute.
Yeah, I agree. Burton is he's so impressive to watch. I mean, he just glides out there, and I've made this point on other shows, but he doesn't catch the ball. He snatches it. I mean, he has violent hands. He goes up and grabs that ball out of the air, and he's got the opportunity. He doesn't just have the talent. He's got the opportunity to get on the field a lot this year. And it's really hard to tell with, Mims and Jenkins and even McKinley Jackson, those guys in the trenches. We won't even know when training camp starts until, maybe once the pads go on after day 3 or day 4. So it is hard to gauge them. And then you got the two tight ends, and they're both working on the side on the rehab field. But I think that's been encouraged. I watched those guys a little bit yesterday, and it was them, and then it was Tyson Anderson, the safety, and it was DJ Ivey, the cornerback, both coming off ACLs. It wasn't just standard medicine ball. I mean, they were doing a lot of heavy, hard rehab work, and they all were moving really well and looked good. So I think Eric All is going to surprise some people. I don't know how much of an opportunity he's going to get because they do have so many other tight ends. But if he can get cleared in time for the start of the season, I think he can be maybe a steal in this draft where the Bengals got him. So hard to tell right now with the rookie class, but that's the silver lining with Trent Brown not being here is Amarius Mims getting all this time, extra time. And again, it's on air and it's walkthrough stuff, but just being out there and having time on task, being next to Alex Kappa, I think is important. So I haven't seen anything from the rookie class that makes you think, did they make a right pick yet? But again, it's super early.
Yeah, it is. What do you think of the new kickoff rules as the Bengals start to work on that and get, find an extra spot or two for players that may not have had a chance to make an impact under the new kickoff rules? Maybe they will, or maybe Charlie Jones gets a few more opportunities to make some plays with his speed. What do you think?
I'm really intrigued by it. And I think if you ask Darren Simmons, you ask anybody, they all are. I mean, he's got a little more stress on his plate being intrigued by it and trying to figure it out and how to set these things up, set up the return coverage teams and then the kick return teams. And it feels like you're going to have 2 returners back there. And I love the idea of like a Charlie Jones and a Chase Brown back there.
Right.
Because both those guys, it's the way it's set up now, it feels like one cut and you could be gone. And both those guys have that twitch in them and that explosion. But maybe they don't put Chase Brown back there. That's when he got hurt last year. He pulled his hamstring in practice, returning a kick. And he is going to be so valuable as a running back now, as a 1A with Zach Moss. But I am super intrigued at how it's going to play out. How many kickoff return touchdowns are we going to see this year? It's going to bring the excitement back to the play for sure. And I think that's what the NFL was going for.
Trags, Mike Petraglia here. There is nothing, and I mean nothing, like the environment of an NBA Finals game. How cool would it be to be in the building to maybe watch Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and the Celtics fulfill their dream and win Banner 18? They're back in the NBA Finals for the second time in 3 seasons, so we know it's going to be an electric atmosphere. Well, I want to tell you about an app that makes being there a reality. It's called Game Time. Getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier with Game Time. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off, with great last-minute deals, all-in prices, their lowest price guarantee, and something I love, a view from your seat. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. There are flash deals as well. Save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of any game or event. And if you find tickets in the same location and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. What a great deal. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem with the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
Zach was making that point yesterday after practice. Zach Taylor was saying how he expects there to be more plays on the new kickoff rules, and we did see a little bit of it in practice. I had to walk away. They worked on it a little bit, right? On Tuesday?
They did a little bit of kick. They've been doing mostly punt coverage stuff in the sessions open to us,
right?
But yeah, they I think you're right. I think they did do a little bit of kickoff stuff yesterday. I generally focus elsewhere when they go to special teams, but maybe we need to change that because
we need to talk to Darren Simmons before they go away for
absolutely
the summer. Because the thing I love talking to Darren Simmons about is you ask him a question, he will answer it. There's no pussyfooting around the subject. He will tell you what is on his mind. He will tell you. He'll give you an honest impression of what he thinks either of a player or a rule or how he's going to have to go about solving it.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's always been that way. And it's so refreshing. Some coaches will maybe say, is that thing on? And if you turn your recorder off, then they'll tell you what they think. But he doesn't care if the recorders are running. He will let you know exactly what he thinks. And we saw it when he was talking about Brad Robbins in this competition with Austin McNamara and in the past with Drew Chrisman and with Kevin Huber. And he is as honest and forthright as can be, and that is something in our business that is definitely appreciated.
I want to wrap it up here with Jay Morrison of the Pro Football Network and ask you about two players that we spoke to, at least I spoke to, on Tuesday after practice, Zach Moss and Mike Gesicki. And both of them made the point that they are getting to know what makes Joe Burrow happy. I found that very telling. And I found it, they're both obviously veteran players. They know they have to make that quarterback happy, if for no other reason than for the quarterback to trust them.
Yeah, and that's such a big thing with Joe is the trust. And Zach was talking about it where, even you try to do it now, but you can't do as much as you want because it is going to come down to pass pro and being in the right spot. And how does he want you to do certain blocks and all of that? And Gesicki the same way. I asked him obviously everybody talks about chemistry and camaraderie and trust. And is there anything you can do overtly to try to speed that up, or you just have to let it happen organically? And he said, yeah, I'm trying to do everything possible I can. I'm not going to blow up his phone and text him all the time and try to develop a relationship that way. But when you're on the field, you do everything you can to try to build that. It's very important. And it kind of off the subject of those guys with Burrow, but I had forgotten about this, but because I asked Mike Gesicki about how, you switch teams, and he's been through this before, and how important is this OTA period to learning the new scheme? And I was kind of going at it from the angle of Trent Brown and Sheldon Richardson not being here, or Sheldon Rankins not being here.
Right.
And he said it is important, but he said it's nothing new to him. Even though he's only switched teams once, he's like, I had a new coordinator every year he said he's had 5 coordinators in 7 years. And he's like, this is just life for me. It's learning a new offense in this time of year is something I've done every year. And it is important. So I think both those guys as veterans know how important it is. And I think you do what you're supposed to do and you go where you're supposed to go, and you're going to earn Joe Burrow's trust. And I have no doubt that those guys are going to do it very, very short order, mini camp or early in training camp.
You ever been in a softball home run hitting derby?
No. My nickname in Little League and Babe Ruth was the king of bunt. I was an excellent. I was the go-to. I had no power.
I would not, given your frame, Jay. You're a bigger man. I would not have suspected that.
I was a late bloomer. I didn't grow until the summer between my junior and senior year of high school. So I had given up sports by then. And but yeah, I had a great eye, and but I did not have much power. And I do know from going to batting cages and just messing around, you can tire yourself out very quickly. And so it's gonna be fun to watch those guys. I've been to celebrity softball tournaments before, and I just think it's so fun because these are the elite of the elite football players in the world, and you put them on a softball field, and they kind of look like us.
Yes.
You would think it would translate, and they'd be great at it.
It's a different athletic endeavor. That's the thing.
They look a little awkward, especially when they're throwing the ball. And so, but I just like what we said earlier in this. I don't know if you're planning on going to it, but it's a great time to go up there and just kind of get to know these guys as people and talk to them and support Logan's cause. And I was asking a lot of guys if they were going. I wasn't aware of this, but a handful of them are going. Tanner Hudson is having a charity golf tournament in Nashville that same weekend. So a handful of them had already committed to that. So I think it's just great to see the team supporting their teammates and just any charitable cause for these guys to give back is really important. And a lot of the guys in the locker room do that.
All right. I'm going to mention it right now because I just brought it up. Clear Vision presents that Saturday, June 1st, the second annual Logan Wilson Celebrity Softball Game. Gates open at 12 p.m. It's at the Day Air Ballpark. That's home of the Dayton Dragons, of course. And if you want more information, it is at LoganWilsonSoftball.com. LoganWilsonSoftball.com. I am going to effort to be there, and I know Jay Morrison of Pro Football Network. He will be there as well, right? That is your plan?
That is my Saturday plan. I was asking Logan for the time. I didn't know how long I was going to be there. And he said that gates open at 12. I think the home run will start around 1, and then the game itself will start around 2.
Now, it's better this year because last year, if I recall, it was on a weeknight, correct? It was on like a Tuesday or a Wednesday night.
Yeah, I think you're right. I didn't go last year, but I do. I think that was that's one of the reasons I didn't make it. It was weeknight.
I did, and Joe Bocci was the home run champion last year.
Yeah, and he talked about how gassed he was. He hit 5 in the first round. He wasn't sure he was going to go much further, but he got just enough to get out of the next round to get into the finals, and he ended up winning it. Jordan Battle, talking a big game. We'll see how he does. He said he played baseball growing up, and he's a good center fielder. So we'll see how good he is and how good of a power hitter he is.
All right, Jay, what are you working on this week? And you want to promote? I want to give you the chance here, of course, as always, to promote the great podcast work that you do.
Yeah, a little later today, I'll be recording the PFN Bengals podcast with Dallas Robinson. Paul and I are Paul's traveling this week, so there will not be a PD&J this week, but I'll be back next week. And then I'll have some more coverage from, I wrote 3 stories yesterday, but we talked to a lot of guys yesterday, so I'll have some more reaction from yesterday's OTA, and then working on some lists for the downtime, the greatest Bengals receivers in history, the greatest Bengals quarterbacks in history. Yeah, so best draft picks, best signings, biggest bust, all that kind of stuff. So that'll all be coming over these next few weeks.
All right. He is Jay Morrison, does a tremendous job covering the Bengals for Pro Football Network. Be sure to listen to his Pro Football Network Bengals podcast. You can do that. Certainly find him online at profootballnetwork.com and on X. Where can people find you, Jay?
Yeah, on X/Twitter @byJMorris, right down here. @byJMorrison, and then as Trags said, on profootballnetwork.com, everything there free to read.
All right, he's Jay Morrison. I'm Mike Petralia. I want to thank everybody for downloading this episode of the Jungle Roar podcast, powered by CLNS Media and our great partners, Prize Picks and the Game Time app. Until next week, keep that jungle roaring.